When it comes to video games, difficulty can be subjective, especially difficulty in playing characters. The Smash scene in particular has no shortage of discussion on what makes a character difficult to play. Some might say a character is hard to play in terms of mechanical execution, requiring extremely input-intensive combos that need to be perfectly buffered in succession. They can be difficult to play on the basis of needing a wide amount of character knowledge, perhaps to account for the variances in size, weight, fall speed, or all of the above. They might be difficult to play in terms of situational awareness, having to find just the right spots on stage or right moments to make right plays. They could even be difficult in terms of the mental endurance required to play them, either because they play in a certain way that mandates a lot of patience from the person piloting them, or perhaps playing towards a timeout win condition. Trying to do so set after set would certainly be quite exhausting, which can be considered a form of difficulty in and of itself. There might even be those who regard fundamentals characters difficult to play on the basis of needing to understand how to read your opponent's habits and find ways to counter them quickly. Whatever the case, for today I wanted to make a video on the 5 characters in my opinion who are the most difficult to play for one reason or another. I'm surprised I haven't made a video on this before, but better late than never. And inevitable as it may be, I'll try my best to stay as unbiased as possible. After you're done watching, be sure to let me know in the comments on who your top 5 would be, and oh yeah, this won't be ordered, so keep that in mind. First character I want to talk about is Peach and by extension Daisy, since they have the same exact kit. If there's a character who embodies all of the facets of difficulty I mentioned earlier, it would be her. Mechanically, the amount of inputs required to execute float cancels and the different combos that go along with them, while rewarding, can be very tight in execution. When you see Mutace, Meki, Ling, or other Peach players doing 0 to 90 strings with the help of turnips and cancels, I wouldn't be surprised if they were frame perfect, percent perfect, or DI read dependent. But there is a good reason why they don't get played that much despite having been perennially a top 10 character since the beginning of the game. Float cancelling or manipulation of float in general is a critical aspect of her neutral, advantage, and disadvantage. There might be moments where it feels very simple to play her, like how she can edge guard just by throwing turnips off stage or mashing float cancel back air at the ledge hoping you'll walk into it. But mechanically speaking, no one can dispute that Peach is one of the most execution contingent characters in all of Smash. Set execution is also very different from combos like Luigi, Kazuya, Falco, and so on. What you're able to do can be influenced by which turnip you're holding, what percent your opponent's at, what percent you're at to account for rage. It may not be Inkling Booyah levels of specific, but they don't exactly have a one-size-fits-all for the majority of the cast. Bear in mind you have to factor opportunities for when it's safe to attack and exert pressure while also needing to master float, and as an extra layer, item techs as well. Turnips can be some of the most combo-intensive items in the game owing to their low knockback and high damage. Forget the infinites you can do on her, I'm talking conventionally. Sure, there might be more use cases for items like Remote Bomb, but of all the items I'd definitely say Peach might be one of the hardest to master. For characters like Diddy and Rob, you might only need to regrab their respective items once or twice in a string, but for Peach I've seen Mutace regrab a single turnip 4 or 5 times in one run. You have to be skilled in multiple techniques to even begin playing the character at a high level, much less find success with them. Of course, mentally speaking, she can also be quite taxing. Peach is notoriously easy to explode with a strong hit owing to her below average weight and being a floaty character. In addition, her raw kill moves are not anything to write home about, which can often lead to her opponent surviving until high percents. To play Peach for an extended period of time, it takes equally as much mental endurance as it does physical. It's one thing to account for all of these factors to her gameplay for 1 or 2 sets, it's another to last throughout an entire major. Peach players may be able to commit most of her combos and whatnot to muscle memory after a while, but she's certainly no Steve or Game & Watch when it comes to autopiloting. It takes a lot out of you to do that for hours on end. Much of why you don't see that many Peach and Daisy mains despite them being one of the best characters in the game is because they're so hard to play. You guys knew he was going to be here. Next character is going to be Shulk. Now far be it from me to not ascribe to the prevailing wisdom believing Shulk mains are ODing on copium every single day over the belief that their character is secretly top tier, they just gotta lock in. But there is a grain of truth to what they're saying. One of the first Wino and Place videos I ever made was on Shulk, and though I don't think he's as good as some like to claim he is, a lot of that has to do with the disparity between on paper and in practice. Shulk may have a fairly straightforward toolkit full of your usual sword attacks with long range and coverage, but he's without question the most technical sword fighter in Smash. The presence of 5 monado arts, each containing extreme stat warping effects, essentially has to make you learn 6 different iterations of the character. One mode can have you flying from one end of the stage to the other faster than Sonic, another can give you tons of knockback but no damage, or tons of damage but no knockback. Then when you factor mode switches, like using an attack in a mode then cancelling it and switching to another mode, the combinations of things you can pull off with this guy are literally endless. even though every monado art has a clear function to it, and there are some bread and butter things you see Shulk players doing, given the character's pretty mediocre at base if we go by frame data, damage output, mobility, and whatnot. Learning all of these intricacies becomes a necessity rather than a luxury. Some might argue learning the different monado art stuff borders on prohibitively impractical, and you might be right on that. Compared to Peach and Daisy, which require tons of button inputs, Shulk is definitely much more on the situational awareness end of things. Not to say he doesn't have frame perfect or tight window techniques, stuff like dial storage requires a lot of things to keep in mind, but doing things like jump art falling up air into double jump art cancel switch to smash art up air to kill at 50 are really specific and sometimes might not even work. You also have to keep track of the cooldown of each art and manage your quote-unquote resources when you can. This is all while trying to operate a character who feels pretty awful to move around with, as outside of his jump height, Shulk has objectively terrible physics and frame data. It would be one thing if he felt more fluid to play with attacks like Roy, but sadly he's not. Although I would say it's for good reason, most other sword fighters would make better use of monado arts than Shulk himself. Either way, an easy placement on this list. If I were to give an objective order, I would probably put Shulk in my number 1. For my next character, Rosalina and Luma will take a spot as one of the hardest characters in the game. Once more, it's not so much the button inputs that contribute to her difficulty, not on their own at least, it's that you have to account for two different characters. Technically, unlike Ice Climbers, Luma isn't a separate character, he's more of an extension of Rosalina, but seeing as you can position them in a remote spot on stage, you'll have access to even more interactions. From a technique point of view, you have stuff like attack cancel up smash or just attack canceling in general, which allows Luma to perform a grounded attack while Rosa does an aerial one, or you can put Luma into a jab while Rosa's free to move around on stage. Like I said, they're not as input intensive as other characters, but the situational awareness required to play this character is truly staggering. More importantly though, is the division of attention. Contrary to what people try to believe, no, you cannot dedicate all of your attention to two things at once, it's just not feasible. Multitasking always comes at the expense of limited focus in both. The instant you have to consider one more thing, the more difficult it becomes to keep track of both. In other words, while Luma is ultimately beneficial for Rosa, the fact that he exists means you have to divide your attention between the two of them, yet you're expected to give both equal attention. Unlike Joker, where our son makes an already good character a busted one, Rosa's kind of a bad character without Luma and a good character with him, which means you need to treat Luma with the same care and attention as you would Rosa. The only problem is that's physically impossible to do. You can try to, but you'll never get to that because of human limitations. Outside of the psychological difficulty of playing a puppeteer character, Rosa's also just a weird character, one of the floatiest in the game, and the interactions of Luma can be kinda janky sometimes, and not really in a way that you can use to your advantage the way these things can with Ice Climbers. In a similar fashion to Shulk, Rosalina has effectively 4 different stances of her own, one by herself, one with Luma right next to her, one with Luma detached from her but still relatively close by, and one with Luma being far away from her. Each one has their own unique setups and stuff to account for. For example, I've seen Dabus use Luma from far away to knock his opponent towards Rosa to then go for a back air, or when you see Rosa using Luma to dip below the stage using Rapid Jab for a 2-frame, setting up combos of Luma after Rosa got hit by something. Next to Shulk, I'd say Rosa might be the second most difficult character to play when it comes to situational awareness, and she may very well be the most uncomfortable character to play, lacking many conventional strengths in favor of her unconventional ones. On the subject of conventionality, we should talk about a character who has nothing unusual in their kit, but is just difficult to play fundamentally speaking, Sheik. Sheik doesn't have any unique mechanics to her, no monado arts, no Luma, no floating. She's just a normal rushdown character with normal properties and moves. One of the most combo-oriented fighters who prioritizes mobility and frame data, notably in that she is statistically the best frame data in the game out of any cast, and she's one of the most evasive fighters in the game with good on-stage and off-stage presence. So, what's difficult about her? Simple answer, margin for error. Sheik's a very mechanical fighter not because of a unique property, but because you have to go through long combo strings to get anything done with her, maximizing every part of her toolkit to the best of her ability, especially when it comes to scoring kills. I can still remember that one clip WebJP pulled off on Neo Game 5 to finish off the last stock. Outside of an up smash on platform tech chase, there might have been no other way he could have killed Neo in that situation besides that combo setup. All that's to say, you need to get good at utilizing her speed and combo setups if you want to compete at a top level. The key difference between Sheik's combo game and that of characters like Fox, Mario, Captain Falcon is that she does very little damage and has poor knockback outside of a couple moves like Bouncing Fish or her smash attacks. This forces you to go through more neutral interactions with her than most other characters, and she has a notoriously hard time cleaning up stocks at reasonable percents. The longer it takes for her to kill her opponent, the more chances they have to kill her first, which unfortunately tends to happen more often than not. I personally believe Sheik's a more mentally demanding character than a mechanical one. Missing those key windows to finish off your opponent early means you'll have to get them all the way to like 180% before you can start beating them with a raw attack. Consequently meaning they'll get access to full rage and have it for a long time, which puts you on a razor's edge every stock. It's the same situation as Peach where due to Sheik being so vulnerable and taking a while to kill her opponent, games can run fairly long on her, and the odds of your opponent scoring a strong hit on you are far higher than you doing that to them, as even a strong back air won't kill at center for a long time. Would she be an easier character if she had the kill power of, say, Captain Falcon? Probably, because it means less dependence on those very specific windows to kill. Last character is going to be Snake. In contrast to the other 4 I talked about, Snake's a very popular character thanks to being one of the best in the game, and I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate for putting him on this video. But I believe he's a very difficult character to pick up and master. In terms of picking him up, though he may have a lot of moves that seem brainless to use and a generally flowcharty game plan at times, there are a few things owing to what makes him so tough to pick up. For starters, he's definitely bottom 5 in terms of worst air physics in the game. Not as floaty as Rosa, nor stationary as Luigi, but he has terrible air acceleration and maneuverability, forcing you to rely on B-reversing to get any meaningful changes in direction. Secondly, as far as gameplay is concerned, Snake's understandably one of a kind. He's not exactly a boxer despite having fantastic boxing tools. He's not a whiff punisher despite having good whiff punish tools. He's not a true zoner despite having zoning tools. He doesn't really belong to any one archetype. You can't really pick him up and rely on basic fundies to win. Thirdly, the amount of effort it takes to micromanage everything. C4 stage positioning is only the start. Usage of grenades. Grenades can do so much for the guy, but only if you know how to manipulate their explosion timings. Sometimes you want to take a grenade and throw it upwards, sometimes you want to just drop it, sometimes you want to throw it like a regular item, sometimes you want to throw it immediately or let it cook for a bit before throwing it. Sometimes you use grenades to extend your recovery. I would label him an item tech intensive macro focused character. One thing I feel like people don't give enough credit to Hurt for is how Snake has just the right set of tools to establish control of the stage, but doing so is a constant effort on behalf of the player. It's not like Steve where you place down blocks and get 3 to 5 seconds to chill and do your thing. Snake has to constantly be throwing and setting grenades everywhere, all while searching for ways to land a clean hit on you. Further, he has the toolkit designed around punishing, not really attacking, setting him apart from traditional zoners who automatically beat you in neutral. If the person playing Snake relies entirely on grenades to close out a stock, you're gonna be there a while. Most of his kills come from reading opponents' panic options instead of eliminating them. Mind you, he does have checkmate scenarios, but I feel like what separates Hurt from other Snake players is ironically his fundies. I forget which tournament, but there was one where he killed Aquila on a panic roll-in using up tilt with only 2 seconds left on the timer, demonstrating he waited the whole entire game to set up that one moment to clean things out. Snake might not be the most mechanically difficult to play like the 4 characters I mentioned, but he is equally high of a mental stack requirement as the likes of Rosa and Shulk. At least at top level. So even though he has a few brainless confirms or situations, to really squeeze the most out of him you need to play the macro game a lot more. Alrighty, that concludes my list. Of course, there are more than just 5 characters in the game that are hard to play. I could have easily included Sonic on the list for mental endurance, or Lucas on account of frame perfect inputs, or Greninja for how funny's demanding he can be, or Pichu for his ridiculously narrow margin for error. But I think I'm good with these 5. Once again, let me know in the comments down below who you would pick for your top 5, but for the time being, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other top 5 Smash videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
On the C4, and this lead continues to blossom.
Something that Hurt does really well too is he fights out of the corner so well. He is very comfortable when he's cornered, able to take a grenade, running with it. Obviously, his character Snake helps with that. You know, all the items, grenades, everything, the explosions he can set up helps a lot. But he looks so comfortable, man, at every point on the map, and that is truly something special about this player.
You hasn't taken that much damage though.
Oh yeah, flipping nice. He could actually.
Oh,
the headshot! Not the headshot. Like, oh, you think you was coming back through? No. And yo, Hurt's S match has been kind of insane this weekend, to be honest.